It was supposed to be a night of fun, her first sleepover at a friend's house, something she'd been looking forward to for weeks. I watched her disappear through the door with her favorite stuffed bear in hand, her face glowing with excitement. Everything seemed perfect until the middle of the night when my phone rang. My daughter's trembling voice reached out through the darkness, begging me to come get her. Her sobs pierced my heart. But before I could even understand what was wrong, the call cut off. When I arrived at the house, the lights were out and no one seemed to be there. I stood outside the dark house, my heart pounding. The moonlight barely illuminated the outline of the building, and an eerie silence filled the air. My hands were trembling as I reached for the doorbell, feeling the chill of anxiety creeping into my bones. The house, which earlier in the day was full of laughter and joy, now seemed abandoned and lifeless. I took a deep breath and prepared myself for what I might find inside. Knocking on the door brought no answer. I banged harder, hoping that someone inside would hear me. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice cracking with desperation. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to catch any sound from within. But there was only the ticking of a distant clock and the rustle of leaves outside. The fear in my chest grew heavier as the empty silence taunted me. Creeping anxiety turned into a storm of fear as I peered through the windows. I scanned the dimly lit rooms, my breath fogging up the glass. Shadows danced eerily across the walls, but there was no sign of movement. "Lily!" I shouted again, hoping my daughter would respond. My eyes darted across the furniture, searching for any clue. The house was unsettlingly quiet, amplifying the panic shaking through me. Where could they have gone? I saw my daughter's stuffed bear on the living room floor, but no sign of anyone. The sight of her beloved toy abandoned and alone sent a shiver down my spine. "Lily!" I screamed into the darkness, my voice echoing through the empty house. I rattled the doorknob, desperate to get in and find her. My mind raced with all the worst possibilities as I scanned every corner, but the house offered no answers, just more confusion and dread. I called her friend's parents, but their phones went straight to voicemail. My fingers fumbled as I tried dialing again, each unanswered ring sounding like a countdown to something terrible. Pick up, I muttered under my breath, frustration and fear mingling into a cold sweat. There had to be another way to reach them. My mind scrambled for options, knowing time was against me. I couldn't stand the thought of my daughter being out there, scared and alone. I drove to the nearest police station and explained the situation. My voice was shaky and my hands still trembling as I recounted every detail to the officer on duty. "Please, you have to help me find her," I pleaded, tears welling up in my eyes. The officer, seeing my distress, immediately called for backup. "We'll do everything we can," he reassured me. His calm, authoritative presence gave me a glimmer of hope amidst my growing panic. Officer Daniels took my statement and promised immediate action. He was a tall, sturdy man with a no-nonsense attitude that made me feel like things might finally be moving in the right direction. "We'll start by checking the house again," he said, grabbing his flashlight. His words were concise and straightforward, offering me some semblance of stability. As he radioed for his partner, I felt an urgent impatience, but also a small spark of relief that I wasn't alone in this. We returned to the house together, accompanied by his partner, Officer Reynolds. The energy was different now. Their presence filled the eerie silence with cautious determination. They moved with precision, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. "We'll find her," Officer Reynolds assured me as we stepped onto the porch. The front door creaked under their firm knocks, and it felt like every second stretched into an eternity. We were in this together, searching for any sign of my daughter. They inspected the premises, noticing the same eerie emptiness. Their disciplined movements contrasted with my jittery pacing. Officer Daniels methodically checked the ground floor, while Officer Reynolds went upstairs. I stood in the hallway, my ears straining for any sound, any clue. Nothing, Reynolds called down, his voice echoing in the empty space. Daniels returned, shaking his head. No sign of a struggle, he observed. The emptiness felt heavier now, choking the hope that had started to flicker. Meanwhile, I contacted my daughter's friends' other parents for any information. Their voices were groggy, and it was clear I had woken them up. "Have you seen Lily or heard anything?" I asked, my desperation seeping through the phone. They seemed just as baffled and worried as I was, promising to call me immediately if they heard anything. With each conversation, my anxiety grew, but I held on to a sliver of hope that someone might have answers. They hadn't heard anything unusual and suggested checking the local parks or hospitals. I immediately relayed this to Officer Daniels. "Good idea," he nodded. "We'll cover more ground that way." As we divided the areas to check, I felt a mix of dread and determination. "Lily loves the park near school," I mentioned. "We'll start there," Officer Reynolds confirmed. I tried not to think about the increasing hours and focused on finding my daughter as quickly as possible. Officer Daniels suggested we canvass the neighborhood, asking residents if they had seen anything unusual. We started knocking on doors while holding up a picture of Lily. "Please, has anyone seen my daughter?" I pleaded with each neighbor. The streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement, and the quiet neighborhood seemed to pulse with the urgency of our search. As each door opened, I hoped for a clue, a hint, anything that could bring us closer to finding her. As we knocked on doors, I was met with a myriad of concerned faces and shaking heads. Everyone I spoke to seemed genuinely worried, but had no useful information. "I'm so sorry, dear," an elderly man murmured, eyes filled with sympathy. Each unanswered query felt like another blow to my rapidly fraying nerves. The officers continued their systematic questioning, and I followed them, clinging to the hope that someone might have seen something, anything. But the neighborhood remained frustratingly silent. An elderly woman across the street mentioned a suspicious van parked outside the house earlier in the evening. It was around 7, she recalled, her eyes narrowing as she tried to remember details. I thought it looked out of place, especially since it didn't belong to anyone around here. My heart skipped a beat. "Thank you so much," I said, my voice shaky with a mix of fear and hope. Finally, we had some direction to look into. She described its rusty exterior and an indistinguishable logo. "It looked like it had seen better days," she added, her brows furrowing. I couldn't make out the logo, but it was definitely something old and faded. Officer Daniels took detailed notes, nodding appreciatively. "This is very helpful, ma'am," he assured her. We thanked her and moved back to the patrol car. With this new piece of information, the officers could now focus on tracking down that van. The van was now the only lead we had. Officer Reynolds radioed in the description, while Daniels entered it into the database. "We'll see if we can find any matching vehicles in the area," Daniels explained. The anxious wait for a response felt like an eternity. Finally, their radio crackled with a reply. There had been a van matching the description seen near a grocery store a few blocks away. We sped off, the sense of urgency palpable in the air. The police tracked the van based on the description and found surveillance footage from a nearby store. We gathered around the tiny screen behind the counter, our eyes glued to the eerie black and white images. "There it is," Officer Reynolds pointed out. We watched as the van pulled up and lingered for a few minutes, then drove away. "It's definitely the same one," Daniels confirmed. "But where did it go next?" The clerk offered to rewind a little more, hoping for another clue. The footage showed the van leaving the friend's house shortly after my daughter's call. My heart pounded as I watched the timestamp closely. "That's the time she called me," I whispered, my voice barely audible. Daniels replayed the footage, watching it several times. "We need to find out where it went next," he said urgently. Reynolds agreed. They nodded at each other before heading back to the patrol car. It felt like we were finally making progress, but time was still ticking. The officers ran the license plate, but discovered it was stolen. I felt my hopes slipping away again. This complicates things, Reynolds muttered. The officers looked at each other, trying to figure out the next move. Despite the setback, we weren't ready to give up. There's got to be something we're missing, Daniel said, determination etched on his face. We needed another angle, another clue that might lead us to where they had gone. I felt my hopes slipping away, but I couldn't afford to give up. Deep inside, a part of me was still holding on to the belief that we'd find her. I had to keep pushing forward. Officer Daniels must have sensed my desperation. We'll find another way, he assured me, trying to keep the spark of hope alive in both of us. We couldn't let despair take over. Failure wasn't an option. We needed another angle, another clue that might lead us to where they had gone. Let's think outside the box, Officer Reynolds suggested. His words resonated with me. We needed to rethink our approach. I mentioned checking social media for any unusual posts or activity. Good idea, Daniels nodded. We regrouped at the station, determined to explore new avenues. This was our chance to uncover something vital. I decided to visit my daughter's school to talk to her teacher and classmates the next morning. Arriving there felt surreal, like stepping into another world entirely. I approached Mrs. Henderson, her teacher, with a knot in my stomach. Have you noticed anything unusual? I asked, my voice trembling. The children were playing, unaware of the turmoil I was facing. Their innocence made the situation even more heartbreaking. Some of her friends mentioned that the friends' parents were acting strangely during the last couple of days. They described whispered conversations and secretive behavior. They seemed tense, one of Lily's classmates admitted. Another added, they were talking to people we didn't recognize. The pieces started to fall into place, and this new information sent chills down my spine. What were they involved in, and how did it connect to Lily? They were observed whispering and having hushed conversations with unknown individuals. This behavior was out of the ordinary, alarming both teachers and students alike. It's like they didn't want anyone to overhear, another child added. I relayed these observations to Officer Daniels over the phone. We need to investigate these new leads immediately, he responded, his tone serious. Could these interactions have something to do with my daughter's disappearance? Suspicious activities surrounding the friends' parents brought in a new wave of anxiety. I felt my heart race as I processed the information. What if they were involved in something dangerous? The thought made my stomach churn. I couldn't stand the idea of Lily being caught up in their mess. Officer Daniels assured me they would look into it further. Meanwhile, I tried to keep my composure. My daughter needed me to stay strong. Could they be involved in something that put my daughter in danger? The thought gnawed at me, making the situation feel even more dire. As I contemplated the possibilities, Officer Reynolds called. We're digging deeper into their background, he informed me. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. I knew it wasn't going to be simple, but at least we were moving in the right direction. Each step felt like another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Seeking more information, I dug through social media profiles of the friends' parents. I scrolled through endless posts and comments, looking for anything that stood out. The more I looked, the more I noted a pattern of odd, almost cryptic messages. What are they hiding? I wondered aloud. Each post seemed to hint at something beneath the surface, something potentially dark. The digital breadcrumbs were there. I just had to follow them. Unusual posts and cryptic comments hinted that they were involved in illegal activities. Phrases like debt settled and meeting at the usual spot stood out. It was as if they were using code to communicate. I took screenshots and notes, realizing this could be crucial. This is big, I muttered. I called Officer Daniels with my findings, my voice breathless with urgency. These discoveries could finally give us the breakthrough we needed. I shared these findings with the police, who decided to put the family under surveillance. We'll keep an eye on their activities, Daniels assured me. He arranged for undercover officers to monitor their movements. Meanwhile, they also started tracing the van's route using traffic cameras. Each step was methodical, aiming to bring us closer to Lily. Knowing the police were on it gave me a small but much-needed sense of control amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, they traced the van's movements using traffic cameras, which led us to a rundown motel in a neighboring town. The footage showed the van passing through multiple intersections before pulling into the parking lot. Officer Daniels, with his focused determination, pointed out each detail on the screen. This solid lead sparked a renewed urgency within me. We needed to get to that motel and uncover any clues that might be there. This place seemed to be the new lead. The motel's dilapidated exterior and flickering neon sign added to the tension. We parked in the lot, scanning the area for anything unusual. It felt like we were on the brink of a breakthrough, the kind that could change everything. "Let's hope this gives us some answers," Officer Reynolds murmured as we approached the entrance. My heart pounded, praying we were close to finding Lily. Officer Daniels and I reached the motel, hoping for a breakthrough. The atmosphere was thick with tension as we approached the front desk. The clerk looked up from his newspaper, a bit startled by our serious demeanor. "We're looking for any information on recent guests," Daniels explained, showing my daughter's picture. The clerk's eyes widened slightly, recognizing the urgency. He nodded and began flipping through the outdated check-in ledger, searching for any useful information. We scoured the area, showing my daughter's picture to the staff and guests. Each inquiry was met with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Have you seen this little girl?" I asked repeatedly, my voice betraying my desperation. We combed through the hallways and peeked into open rooms, our search methodical but urgent. Every second felt critical, and the possibility of finding Lily drove us to cover every possible angle. A motel employee recalled seeing a girl matching her description with a couple resembling the friend's parents. "They checked in late last night," the employee recalled, scratching his head. "Stayed in room 14 if I remember correctly." My heart raced as I thanked him profusely. Officer Daniels exchanged a look with Reynolds, a silent understanding passing between them. We finally had a concrete lead that might lead us to Lily's whereabouts. They had checked in under false names. The motel's register showed an unfamiliar alias, but the descriptions matched perfectly. They were trying to cover their tracks, Officer Reynolds noted, scribbling down the details. This realization sent a chill down my spine, but at least we had something to work with. These false identities revealed their intent to remain hidden. Now, it was up to us to stay one step ahead. As we pieced together the timeline, we became more certain of their involvement in my daughter's disappearance. The check-in time at the motel corresponded suspiciously with the moments after Lily's distress call. "They moved quickly," Daniels remarked, tracing their path on a map. The puzzle pieces began to fit, but we needed more. My hope hinged on every new detail, the urgency to find Lily now more pressing than ever. We finally got a break when Officer Reynolds found a van abandoned near a remote cabin in the woods. The discovery felt like a jolt to our senses, progress on our trail. "It's definitely the same van," Reynolds confirmed, his voice steady. We approached the van cautiously, the eerie silence palpable. This piece of evidence gave us a new lead, but also a fresh wave of anxiety about what might come next. It appeared they had switched vehicles once more. The van had been left hastily, confirming our suspicions that they were keen on covering their tracks. "They might still be nearby," Daniel speculated. The surrounding area was dense with trees and overgrown paths, perfect for keeping hidden. I felt my patience fraying, but the thought of Lily fueled my resolve. We needed to search every possible hiding spot in this area. The police set up a perimeter to search the cabin and surrounding area. The tactical teams moved swiftly, their searchlights cutting through the gathering darkness. "Fan out and keep your eyes peeled," Officer Daniels instructed, his tone authoritative. I waited anxiously at the edge, watching the coordinated efforts unfold. Despite the fear gnawing at me, there was a sliver of hope that we were getting closer to finding Lily. Inside the cabin, they found my daughter's jacket and a torn piece of her pajamas. The fabric of her pajama top was familiar, a pattern of tiny stars she loved. Officer Reynolds held up the piece, turning it over in his hands. "Looks like she was here recently," he noted. My heart raced at the thought that we might be close. But where was Lily now? She had to be close, but we were running out of time. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Every second felt like an eternity. Officer Daniels glanced at his watch, his face tight with concern. "Keep searching," he ordered his team. The urgency in his voice matched the pounding in my chest. We couldn't afford to waste any more time. As they continued searching, one of the officers found a hidden entrance to an underground bunker. "Over here," he called out, waving us over. The entrance was concealed beneath a pile of leaves and branches, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Officer Daniels shone his flashlight into the dark opening. "This could be it," he said, his voice steady but filled with tension. We prepared to enter. I felt my breath catching in my throat as we prepared to enter the bunker. It was a narrow, claustrophobic descent, and my pulse raced with every step. The air inside was damp and musty, adding to the sense of dread. Officer Reynolds led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. I followed closely, my mind racing with anticipation and fear. Where could Lily be? The officers descended into the bunker with caution. The walls were lined with old, rusting metal shelves, and the floor was uneven and cold beneath my feet. "Stay behind us," Officer Daniels instructed, his voice firm but reassuring. I nodded, my eyes darting around for any sign of my daughter. Each step echoed in the confined space, amplifying the tension that hung in the air. Several makeshift sleeping quarters and signs of recent occupation pointed to the fact that they had been keeping my daughter there. The beds were unmade and scattered belongings hinted at a hasty departure. "They left in a hurry," Reynolds observed, picking up a half-eaten sandwich from the floor. My heart sank further. They had been so close, yet now they were gone. We needed to find them quickly. But she wasn't in the bunker, and time was slipping away. Each empty room felt like a punch to my already fragile hope. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. Daniels and Reynolds exchanged worried glances, their faces mirroring my own anxiety. "We'll expand the search," Daniels said decisively. We climbed back out, our determination renewed despite the looming fear of running out of options. Just as despair threatened to overtake me, we received an urgent call. Daniels' radio crackled to life, the dispatcher's voice urgent and clear. A hiker reported seeing a campfire and hearing a child's cries for help further up the mountain trail, she relayed. I felt a jolt of hope. "That could be her," I exclaimed. Daniels nodded, his eyes filled with determination. We had a new lead, and we couldn't waste a second. A hiker had found a campfire and heard a child's cries for help further up the mountain trail. The information sent a rush of adrenaline through me. "Where exactly?" Reynolds asked over the radio, getting the coordinates. The hiker described the area in detail, mentioning landmarks that would guide us. This was it, a possible way to find Lily. We set off immediately, each step fueled by renewed hope and urgency. We raced to the location, battling our own fears. The trail was steep and rocky, each incline making my heart pound harder. Officer Reynolds led the way, his flashlight swinging back and forth. "Stay close," he advised. My breath came in short gasps, worry propelling me forward. As we neared the coordinates, the faint glow of a campfire became visible. "There it is," Daniel said, picking up the pace. When we arrived, we saw the friends' parents hurriedly dismantling their temporary camp. The campfire was still smoldering, casting faint shadows on the faces of the distressed individuals. Officer Daniels held up his hands, signaling them to stop. "Police, stay where you are," he commanded. The tension in the air was almost palpable. The parents froze, their faces etched with fear and guilt. We needed to find Lily, and quickly. With a sudden rush of relief, I saw my daughter inside a small tent, her face wet with tears. "Lily," I shouted, dashing towards her. Officer Reynolds placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Stay back. Let us handle it," he warned, his eyes filled with concern. The officers slowly approached the tent, speaking softly to avoid alarming her further. My heart pounded in my chest, praying she was unharmed. The officers quickly apprehended the friend's parents and freed my daughter. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now," Officer Reynolds reassured her as he lifted Lily into his arms. Tears streamed down my face as I watched them. "Mommy!" she cried out, reaching for me. As soon as the officers cleared the scene, I embraced her tightly, feeling the tension dissolve just a bit. My little girl was finally back in my arms. As they were taken into custody, the truth came out. Officer Daniels began to question them, and it didn't take long for the story to unfold. "We had no choice," the friend's father said, his voice shaky. "We were in deep trouble." His words hinted at a larger issue. My mind raced, trying to process the implications of their statements. It was clear there was more to the situation than we initially realized. The friend's parents had been running from a loan shark and had taken their children and mine as leverage to bargain. "We never meant to hurt anyone," the mother added, her voice breaking. Officer Reynolds took detailed notes as she explained. "We thought if we had the kids, they wouldn't push us so hard." The depth of their desperation and fear became glaringly apparent. They had put everyone's lives at risk to save their own. They never intended to harm anyone. Their faces were pale, eyes downcast as they recounted their ordeal. "We just wanted to find a way out, to buy more time," the father stammered. Officer Daniels gave them a disapproving look, but continued to listen. It was almost incomprehensible that their misguided plan led to this chaos. While it was a relief to know they didn't mean to harm, the damage had been done. They just wanted to use them as a bargaining chip. The friend's father kept repeating, "We thought it would work." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. How could anyone put children through such a nightmare? Officer Daniels stepped in, explaining their rights while Reynolds made arrangements for their processing. Although they claimed good intentions, the reality of their actions created a web of trauma that couldn't easily be untangled. While the immediate nightmare was over, the emotional scars from this ordeal would take time to heal. Lily clung to me, her small body trembling. "I was so scared, Mommy," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. You're safe now," I murmured, stroking her hair. The comfort of holding her was bittersweet. The ordeal had ended, but the journey to emotional recovery had only just begun. We would need time, patience, and a lot of love. In the days that followed, police continued their investigation, uncovering more about the loan shark. Officer Reynolds called me with updates, explaining how they traced the illegal activities leading up to the incident. Each detail painted a clearer picture of the friend's parents' desperation. "We're working on bringing everyone involved to justice," he assured me. It was a small consolation, knowing these criminals would face repercussions for their actions. Their network was more extensive than we imagined. We slowly began to piece our lives back together. Lily returned to school, and I kept a close watch, ensuring she felt safe and supported. We attended therapy sessions to help her process the trauma. Nightmares still woke her up, but each day seemed a little better. The support from our community was overwhelming, reminding me we weren't alone. Healing would take time, but we were on the path to recovery. Therapists were brought in to help my daughter and her friends cope with the trauma they had endured. Lily's sessions were tough but necessary. She talked about her fears and nightmares, learning ways to manage her anxiety. It wasn't an overnight fix, but knowing she had professional support made me feel more hopeful. The same support was extended to the friends involved, as everyone tried to find a way back to normalcy step by step. Their schoolmates rallied around them, offering support in every way possible. Lily's friends made cards and brought her favorite snacks, showing her she wasn't alone. Teachers allowed her extra time to adjust, letting her take breaks when needed. The sense of community within the school was heartwarming. It was a small but significant part of her recovery process, helping her to feel surrounded by kindness and understanding during such a confusing and scary time. Despite the relief of having my daughter back, the memories of that terrifying night lingered. Both of us would sometimes be jarred by sudden reminders, a police siren, a phone ringing at an odd hour. Lily would cling to me, asking questions to make sense of it all. I had to be strong, even though I had my moments of breaking down. Healing was going to be slow, but we knew we could support each other through it. Community meetings were held to discuss safety and how to prevent such incidents in the future. Parents, teachers, and local officials gathered, brainstorming ideas to make the neighborhood safer. Suggestions ranged from improved street lighting to creating a neighborhood watch program. The discussions were proactive, showing a collective determination not only to support us, but also to ensure the safety of all children in the area. These meetings provided a sense of unity and purpose. The Friends' parents faced serious charges, and the media coverage was intense. News outlets swarmed our quiet town, eager for any new developments. It was overwhelming, but I understood the public's interest. They were charged with kidnapping and endangering minors, among other things. Watching their trial unfold on TV brought mixed emotions. While justice was being served, it was painful to see people we once trusted being held accountable in such a public manner. Through it all, we remained grateful for the relentless efforts of the police and our community. Officer Daniels and Reynolds became more than just law enforcement. They were our lifeline. The support from neighbors, friends, and even strangers who heard our story was overwhelming. It reminded me that in the face of such a harrowing experience, there was still so much good and kindness in the world. Their unwavering efforts kept us going. Slowly, things began to return to a semblance of normalcy. Lily started having playdates again, and I went back to work. Our routine helped stabilize our lives. The therapy sessions were still ongoing, but every day felt a bit more hopeful. I could see Lily's laughter returning, little by little. We were cautious, but also determined to rebuild the life we had before. The shadows of that night still lingered, but they grew fainter. We celebrated my daughter's safe return with a small family gathering. Close friends and relatives came by, bringing food and lots of hugs. Lily shyly accepted their presence and well wishes, slowly coming out of her shell. The evening was filled with heartfelt conversations and shared relief. It felt good to have a moment of normal celebration amid the chaos. Everyone's presence reinforced that we were not alone in this journey of recovery. The bond between us grew even stronger as we learned to cherish every moment. Ever since Lily came back, each hug felt tighter, each "I love you" more sincere. We spent more time together, appreciating the simple joys of life. This experience had taught us the fragility of life, and we aimed to make the most of it. Our relationship became a source of immense strength and comfort as we navigated through our new reality. Though the scars remained, we found strength in love and resilience, forever changed by the ordeal, but united and unbroken. The experience had hardened us, making every small victory feel monumental. We kept moving forward, each day bringing a new sense of normalcy back into our lives. Through the love and support of our community, family, and friends, we knew we could face anything. We were ready to build a brighter future together.